Florida, right? You said you're in Florida right
No,
now.
I'm not in Florida. Not in Florida these days, no. I'm in
Okay.
Brussels.
Oh, you're in Brazil.
Yeah. What about you, Win?
I'm in Thailand, midnight here.
You're in Thailand.
Yeah, I'm in Thailand, midnight, 11 p.m. So
Okay,
about to
okay.
10, like, tomorrow. You
Okay,
guys
I mean,
just woke up, I believe.
very good.
Yeah, guys, I believe that we are already live, so I think that we can start. Right? Wait a second, let me check. Yeah, I think that we are live. So, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us. Today's webinar is called Human Rights, Innovations, and Financial Freedom. So today I'm very happy to have our experts who will touch base on how actually tech is shaking up finance, particularly how Bitcoin and decentralized systems are helping out human rights, and also how they changing, or at least trying to change, the rules of access, of privacy, of inclusion. So today we will touch base on basically how Bitcoin is breaking financial barriers, how it is helping out people in oppressive regimes, what can be the strategies for the real economic inclusion. Of course, we will discuss a few case studies. We are having experts from different parts of the world, so I think it would be interesting to discuss how different it can be in different parts of the world. And I'm very happy to introduce our speakers. So we have Ko Ko Aung, who was born and raised in Myanmar, and he's working at the Human Rights Foundation for Global Bitcoin Adoption. And he is also the Human Rights Fellow at the Bitcoin Policy Institute. And it's quite late in his time zone, so it's additional credit and appreciation for finding the time, making the effort for joining us in this webinar. We also have here with us Jorge Traisatzi, who is the president of the Economic Inclusion Group, and he has advised institutions like the Council of Europe ensuring a right to banking through regulatory reforms. He is also research at Florida Atlantic University, and his work explores financial regulation, economic policy, and global sanctions. Jorge has also lectured at Harvard, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Cambridge, and published in lots of media. And last but not least, we also have here Victoria Zaichenko, who is a media manager, and she has worked for leading Ukrainian news outlets for more than 20 years. She also used to head the Bitcoin Magazine Ukraine media project for several years, and also in cooperation with Human Rights Foundation, she now organizes monthly Bitcoin meetups in Kiev. I think that we can start with a few things. So basically, let's start with the question how all of you guys came to Bitcoin industry, what led you to that, what was the predisposition. I think that everyone here has a very unique context. Jorge, let's start from you.
Thank you, Dania. Thank you for organizing this. Thank you for the introduction. And thank you for everybody in this call, good friends here in this call. In my case, I joined, let's say, I started working with Bitcoin because I saw the necessity of doing so by supporting people in the most difficult environments, like, for example, Venezuela. Bitcoin has become a tool for empowering people in places, especially when you don't have any kind of financial freedom. In Venezuela, as you know, since 2003, we have had very strict currency controls, capital controls. We have then a hyperinflationary system in which our currency lost 10 million% of its value in a period of just 1 year. We have had one of the 3 biggest and longest hyperinflation periods in the country. So in that environment, I find myself in a situation in which I had to know how can I support? How can I support people on the ground so they can do their work, so they can continue advancing the cause of freedom, the cause of democracy, and Bitcoin has become a tool in that regard. When I talk to people, let's say in the US or in Europe, I tell them that For us, Bitcoin is not an investment vehicle. We don't see it as a speculative asset. We're not trying to make profit out of it. For us, it's simply a ways to bring capital, a way to support people in the most difficult environments. That's my background. And since then, I have seen also how much the Bitcoin community cares about the values that all of us here share, which is that we want innovation, we want economic freedom, and we want political systems in which people have autonomy, financial autonomy, economic autonomy. And that's why I'm very pleased to be here today and to be with you today.
Thank you, Jorge. I think that when it comes to challenging political situations and regimes, I think that Win has lots to add on that. I read a few articles about the situation in Myanmar, so I think that you can tell our audience much better.
Yeah, for sure. So basically, yeah, I spend most of my time, growing up in Burma. So most people do not recognize my home country. I think one of the reason is because it has two official names. Some people call it Myanmar and some people call it Burma, and I prefer to call it Burma for my personal belief. Yeah. Anyway, regardless, so the thing about my country is like we were isolated from the international community for like half of the century, and we do not have a proper financial infrastructure. So basically, if you work hard and you're like just average person like me in my home country, you grew up, you work hard, but you will never get ahead of your life, with the fiat currency. Because the financial infrastructure is broken, you cannot get a mortgage if you do not rich. So like you do not rich, so you cannot get a mortgage. It's like a chicken and egg issue. And like most country in like Europe or the rest of Southeast Asia and Asian country, we also do not have access to global financial market. Like for example, you cannot participate in the regional stock market, and we do not even have a look at like proper look at stock market as well. So I was just like a regular guy. I work hard and yeah, I mean I have some sort of recognition in the local community among young people. So I became some sort of a public figure back in the old day. And I have some sort of like a disposable income, but I was never able to achieve the buying a house at the first place in my home country because I'm just an average guy. The system create an extremely bias towards rich people or people who connected to the powerful people. And so a friend of mine actually introduced me about cryptocurrency. Yeah, you had it right. Cryptocurrency, not Bitcoin. We're not talking about Bitcoin right now. Like, back in 2019, a friend of mine introduced me about cryptocurrency and said, bro, think about sort of like a diversify, right? Your investment, personal finance in a cryptocurrency, because if the price get high, you can probably, rich. So that's a basic idea. A friend of mine, basically shared, because like I learned about Bitcoin in the past, but for some reason, I read it on like a mainstream media. I Googled about it. Almost all the time, it has negative sentiment towards a Bitcoin. So kind of like I was a little bit scared of touching a Bitcoin. So, but a friend of mine, a very good friend of mine, introduced about try investing in cryptocurrency, and then yeah, I kind of like basically diversify in different cryptocurrency and play some sort of casino gambling, right? But I mean, it was actually good for people like me because I cannot able to access for a mortgage, and I cannot access to any sort of like a stock market globally because like I'm just an average person. So I think the cyberspace, Bitcoin, stablecoin, cryptocurrency, I think create a level playing field for people living in New York City to Singapore to Yangon to like Venezuela, right? So everyone can participate. So I got into a cryptocurrency and Bitcoin space in 2019. as an investment purpose. Like, you know, I just want to like, you know, honest, you know, I was, you know, long ago, you know, I was just a noob, right? I was just a beginner. I mean, I'm not ashamed about it. And so, you know, but after COVID, and then there was a political crisis happened in 2021, and I was one of the prominent activists at the time. So that was a Bitcoin case came in, and that was the digital assets, you know, case came in, because all my bank account got frozen because of my participation in and also leading the people movement. And, you know, so like usually, you know, in the international media, they talk you about, you know, how violent oppression, you know, violently crack down the public. And it's supposed to tell the story, the kind of story, you know, it's good because you represent voice for those people who cannot raise their voice in the global space. But on the other hand, most people do not see, or most people fail to see, is invisible oppression, financial oppression. So when they, you know, during the revolution, you know, when they like crack down on the like a bank account, activists and donation, because like democracy movement worldwide is extremely expensive. But if you shut down your financial lifeline, people will have only two options to choose. Do you want to exercise your freedom of speech and human rights at the risk of, you know, losing your personal saving, or just mind your own business and live in the peace? In the fear war, most people will choose the second option, because the first option is not sort of like, you know, not favor to regular people. But in the world of digital asset, think about it. Will you exercise your freedom of speech and human rights without, you know, without fear of, you know, getting frozen in your bank account, debank your bank account? Or second thing, just mind your own business, live in your own peace. In that case, you know, if you do not fear of getting your bank account frozen, most people will fight for their rights, and most people will fight for democracy. So that's a lesson I learned like 4 years ago. And I get out of the country, I lost almost all my saving in fiat bank account, but I had Bitcoin and I had cryptocurrency, I had stablecoin. And but later down the line, you know, I learned more about, you know, a Bitcoin technology and how powerful it is, why cryptocurrency is like, you know, it's a casino. And then basically I became an absolutely, you know, believer in Bitcoin technology, because I mean, decentralized, nobody can control. I think which is a fascinating technology in the 21st century. So that's like my first-hand experience, and it was my lifeline. And it is still a lifeline for billions of people around the world to save their, you know, their hard-earned economic energy to fight against the inflation, or, you know, send to the country that, you know, non-profit organizations are not allowed to receive donation from foreign, you know, foreign entities. So I think it's a powerful, like, powerful technology, but unfortunately, it's like mostly misunderstood, which is why, you know, I decided to join with Human Rights Foundation to, you know, participate in this global Bitcoin adoption mission.
Thank you, Win. Yeah, I think it's really crazy, and quite often people, at least in the very initial level, they're talking about Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies more as the ability to earn or about trading, but they are not mentioning, or maybe they do not think about the situations where it becomes the necessity or the opportunity to escape the regimes, or the opportunity to exercise civil rights, or to achieve a certain kind of financial freedom. So invisible oppression is exactly how I would label that as well. But a bit moving on, Victoria, we still did not ask you, how did you come to Bitcoin? Because you have quite an extensive media background, and now you're also organizing Bitcoin meetup. So what led you to it, and how was also your journey with Human Rights Foundation? Because I feel like here everything is kind of intertwined.
Yes, thank you, Tanya. That's true. I have over 20 years of experience in the different Ukrainian media companies. So 3 years ago, I worked as a business development director in famous Forbes Ukraine media, and my colleagues recommended to me that I become the CEO of an upcoming company called Bitcoin Magazine Ukraine, which was a franchise of Bitcoin Magazine USA. Together with my team, I launched a niche website focused only on Bitcoin news. We started hosting Bitcoin meetups, published a print magazine, hosted a large Bitcoin-only conference, and ran a website. 1 year ago, I moved to another position at the famous Ukrainian news company Ukrainska Pravda, and but I still continue to host Bitcoin meetups and BitDevs every month in Kiev, and this happened thanks to HRF grant. That's my story.
Thank you. I mean, you, as far as I remember, you were also participating in several Oslo Freedom Forums, which were also organized by the HRF. And you were also at the Global Bitcoin Summit in Nashville. And you were there both as the attendee and you were the panelist there as well. And of course, the part of these panels were dedicated to the countries that are fighting against oppressive regimes. And I think that soon we will talk about the cases for both Venezuela and, of course, Burma as well. But for you, which were the takeaways from that? Because I think that there are many more countries that we could talk about when mentioning Bitcoin as the tool for fighting for human rights. But given Ukrainian context, how do you think what cases or tools or ways from these fights could be applied to our Ukrainian context?
No, the main point to remember is that dictators on different countries always act the same way. They block bank accounts and financially repress protest leaders, but there is also a way out. And at our meetups, we always repeat that Bitcoin as the only decentralized digital currency that can help wherever there is no access to financial structure. And it happened with us in Ukraine during the first few months then war started. It was true. All banks was closed, and we didn't have access to any international financial organization to help to our families, to refugees who went abroad. And I'm really very happy that I have an opportunity to listen to the stories of well-known freedom fighters at HRF events, and learn something from them. My country has had 2 revolutions against Rouge dictators, and for 3 years now there has been a bloody war that had killed thousands of lives of Ukrainian people. And our current mission is to survive, is to help each other, help our families, our relatives abroad, and of course our militaries. And donation in Bitcoin and different crypto assets, of course, it's for now and last 3 years, it's really things that we do. And with this task, Bitcoin does its jobs very well.
Thank you. Jorge, moving to you, as Victoria already touched base on the lessons that Ukraine can learn, it would be also great if you could share a few cases or provide our audience with a few examples about how activists or regular citizens that also suffer from Maduro regime could use Bitcoin to navigate all the economic challenges that come together with that, and of course how they can advance their causes with that.
Yes, I mean, it's very important from the activist perspective, as I was mentioning. Without financial resources, people cannot fight back or pursue any kind of cause. And in these authoritarian regimes, the most important for them form of control is actually financial control. And this is something that you see in soft authoritarian regimes, in stronger authoritarian regimes. They take away, they isolate the country from any kind of financial access, financial inclusion, etc. In the case of activists in Venezuela, the use is pretty simple. It has been as a source of supporting their work. It has been a way for them to finance their activities, because in countries like Venezuela, obviously you cannot have a bank account if you're a human rights activist, because it can be used against you, it can be being weaponized against you, and especially if you want to get any kind of funding from people outside the country who want to support you, or usually the people who can support, because Venezuela is a brutal humanitarian crisis at the same time. So Bitcoin has become their way. People from Venezuela also, is extremely difficult to get any kind of traditional banking or fintech solution as a result of regulation. Many people who, let's say, want to use, let's say, TransferWise, or they want to use any kind of new fintech solution, they cannot, because they cannot meet the KYC standards, the know your customer standards. And this is happening to people inside the country and people outside the country, to all the immigrants that we have. So we had 8 million people who left the country because of the humanitarian crisis. And many of them, sadly, cannot be financially included even after they have a residency in their new countries, and even when they want to work, even if they have a job offer, it's extremely difficult because more and more regulation is blocking people from having financial access, bad regulation. Specifically also in the case of Venezuela, right now the country also has a big chunk of its economy being remittances from abroad. People that leave the country, they want to send money home. So for many of them, Bitcoin has also become a solution. What is interesting for people to know is that Venezuela, because of the degree of financial repression, because of the degree of financial control, then it's a very interesting case study about the importance of protecting your financial security and your financial access. In Venezuela, again, since 2003, we had these very extreme controls over currency. It was very difficult for entrepreneurs to move money around. It was very difficult for people to move money around. And if you combine that with an environment in which the domestic currency continues to devaluate, it becomes extremely difficult for people to maintain any kind of financial health. That's why people lost their life savings. That's why people lost all the money they had in a very easy period of time, very fast period of time in Venezuela. So it's a very warning side about people from other countries, about the importance of protecting your assets, and at the same time to also push your policymakers to adopt more market-friendly, more financially sound policies. Because right now we live in a world in which more and more you see all this increase in financial compliance, in controls to move money from one country to the next, in controls to open businesses in different jurisdictions. And in this kind of environment, then we need to propose solutions. And one solution comes from policy reform, and the other solution comes from innovative solutions. So that way people can actually restore and maintain their financial freedom. Also, something very important for people to understand is that in autocratic regimes and also in democracies, there is virtually no banking privacy. People think that this only happens in places like Venezuela, where people have no financial privacy. So the government can access and abuse all people's financial transactions. They can enter, they can use them against them, they can weaponize it. But this also happens in all countries. Even if something that most people don't understand is that even if you are a resident or an American citizen or a citizen of Europe, because of financial regulation, everybody every regime, every policymaker can find ways to access your financial data. And this is something that also puts in danger a lot of people who are doing business internationally. This also puts in danger a lot of policymakers or human rights activists abroad. So even the traditional financial system is failing us in that way, which is why Bitcoin has become a solution, a very practical solution for many people. Obviously, it is not the easiest thing in the world to understand, but people do it because there is a real necessity. It solves the problems for millions of people in broken financial system. And in Venezuela, any kind of solution that people want to develop for their own lives, the most important thing is how to keep money, how to keep your money, how to protect it, and how to be able to move your money around. And Bitcoin has become a solution in that regard.
Thank you. And of course, we'll have the subsequent questions about the initiatives that in this regard, the Economic Inclusion Group is actually working on. Could you share any current developments?
Yes, of course. What we are proposing, what we are pushing very hard is two things. One, we believe there should be a right to banking for everybody. And we're pushing this very strongly in Europe, mainly here in Brussels and at the European institutions. Banking is not a privilege. Banking is a necessity in today's world. Financial access is essential to be a citizen. Financial access is essential to live in society and to be a productive member of society. But right now, we have millions of people who are isolated and left behind by financial system. Many people from, let's say, Venezuela or Ukraine who live in Europe, almost impossible to even open a bank account. Many people who are doing business in Latin America but are from Europe, extremely difficult to open a bank account. Many humanitarian organizations who want to send help, urgent help, to places like Ukraine or to places like Venezuela, they end up without even a bank account in Europe. So you are seeing different economic sectors who are being extremely undermined by bad regulation. Trade sector, humanitarian sector, expats, all these communities are being financially excluded. So on that specifically, we're proposing a right to banking, and by reforming key regulations who are right now the main barriers towards that. On that regard, we're cooperating with a few institutions, with a few members of parliament, and we are right now writing reports because there is almost no real documentation on the magnitude of this problem and also what are the causes of this problem. So on the one hand, we are working on this. The second thing that we are pushing is protections for people so that their banking data cannot be weaponized or undermined by regimes. There are many human rights activists, policymakers, people living in democracies, many political refugees, that they cannot have a bank account, or even if they have a bank account in democracies, regimes can have access to their banking data, to their private information, and in many cases to their personal communication. This is a risk, and this is a total undermining of the rule of law of these countries. Authoritarian regimes have found ways to weaponize the financial system, to use it against people, and to turn it into political tool. This is also a topic in which most people either are not aware or they don't know how to resolve. Similar to the way authoritarian regimes were abusing other mechanisms 10 years ago, they're learning more and more how to abuse these specific mechanisms. And we are at the forefront of this issue because there is a complete lack of awareness about which specific mechanisms are being used in this regard. So if somebody who is listening to us today is either a victim of some kind of financial repression, financial abuses by authoritarian regimes, or financial exclusion simply because the country they come from, please reach out to us. You have here somebody representing you. You have here somebody who is fighting for you. And I believe that all of us in this call, we are on the same boat on this, because all of us have had to move because we have been pushed by regimes. So we have to left our home because of that. So the most important is that for people like you and I, always we have financial access, and always we have our financial privacy protected.
Thank you, Jorge. Yeah, I agree with everything that you said. And actually, I just recalled a conversation that we had with you maybe even a few years ago, and you were talking about how lots of people from Venezuela moved to Spain, for example, and they also had the limited access to banking. And the problem is that with banking and with the accounts, quite often you also need to have either the residence permit, or you need to have a stable employment, or you need to be particularly employed in the country of your residence, which sometimes is also not the case. And there are, of course, lots of bureaucratic issues that are happening, and they depend on individual regulations of particular countries or EU regulations, depending on the case. So yeah, I think it's crucial, and we would be also happy to share the links to current developments of Economic Inclusion Group, so that people who might be in need of the information or resources, or how to deal with issues that might be relevant to them, could also see what can be done in that regard.
Thank you. Yes, because as I was mentioning to you, like in many cases, you have this legal barrier, for example, employment or residency, but at the same time, to get this bank account is an essential step. So there is a point in which people don't know what to do. They don't know that how can they have a bank account if they don't have residence? How can I have residence if I don't have a bank account? So it's an extremely problematic issue.
Yeah, absolutely. Win, coming back to you, because I think that it can also resonate with your situation. As you mentioned, you left the country, and then I would have to ask you which challenges you also faced in that regard, and also, of course, whether there were any experiences where having digital assets, where having Bitcoin was helping in overcoming the financial barriers, because you also mentioned that you lost certain financial belongings due to the political situation. And of course, the next question would be which kind of tool it can serve for other asylum seekers worldwide, or for refugees, so generally people who are fleeing oppressive regimes, from your experience and your perspective.
Yeah, obviously, I use like, certain kind of, crypto exchange at the time. I bought all my, Bitcoin and cryptocurrency and some sort of stable coin over there. So yeah, I mean, in America, people say, put in your cold wallet, which is fine. But the problem is that, cold wallet costs like $45, $50, but not a lot of people, like on a global scale, right? Not a lot of people could not able to afford. So we need to kind of get cheaper model for people to get self-custody in their cold wallet. But they can get a free hot wallet, right, in their smartphone. And so I have a hot wallet. I put some sort of like half of my Bitcoin cryptocurrency in exchange, and I left my country during the my lowest point. And it's worked. When I get to the safe place in Bangkok, I converted my Bitcoin, stablecoin, and cryptocurrency, some portion of it into the local fiat currency. So that way, I was be able to survive financially and maintain my lifestyle over here. And then I'm grateful that United States offer me the opportunity to resettle in the United States. So that's like kind of like my first-hand experience, or how unexpectedly I did not have a plan about it, unexpectedly Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, and stablecoin helped me and served me as a lifeline. But on the one hand, in like Southeast Asia, which has about 10 countries and one of the largest populated region in the world, that like the kind of like interesting thing, people in this region have more smartphone. Like 80% of the entire population here is like smartphone, but only 17%, 70% of people have a bank account. And so, which means that, people who have a smartphone has larger population than people who have a bank account access because of the different situation. In my home country, in Burma, we've been like in a civil war for like many years, and it has been going on. So we do not have much like a strong transportation infrastructure. We do not have much like strong financial infrastructure. In the other country, like they have a different kind of geography. Like, for example, Indonesia, right? They have some sort of like thousands of island for one country. So like it's extremely difficult to establish physical banking structure and connected to one another. So in the 21st century, in the digital age, people in those countries, they could not like physically go and access to like physical banking, but they have a smartphone, they have an internet, and we now also have a digital technology. So they do not need, people who flee in the country, like, flee in the civil war, like domestic abuse, and political persecution. They're gonna have to leave everything behind. They cannot carry their global. I mean, like even if they have, because it's extremely dangerous. Or they're gonna have to leave their house in their home country. But what if they have something that nobody can control in their phone? Just remember the C phrase or password, and then or maybe you uninstalled it. You created an account. You uninstalled the application. You cross the border or you get to the safe place. You just re-download it and fill your C phrase or fill your correct password, and then you get back your access to the digital asset. So, which is like extremely transformative technology in our generation, or probably in the human history, for people like fleeing the war or in humanitarian crisis, or people living in like a very remote area. So I think Bitcoin offer hope to those kind of people, which is like fascinating. But if you see like rich country content about Bitcoin, they always talk about never go up, right? They always talk about if you invest 1,000 in Bitcoin this year, you might probably get $2,000 next year. But for like Douglas called out the war, who is like nobody's willing to help, right? Like for example, Burma or Ukraine or Venezuela, not all people is paying attention. But Bitcoin, like serve as a whole, serve as a lifeline. But there's a one condition: only if they know the right education, only if they know the proper education. So, which is also why Human Rights Foundation has been running the Bitcoin education webinar. I also like invite all the people who has been participating in this like webinar to join our upcoming Bitcoin webinar, which is going to happen on like March 17 to 19th, like with a 3-day Bitcoin webinar about how to use Bitcoin and why Bitcoin is matter for people living in developing world, like especially like if you are nonprofit organization leaders, nonprofit initiative leaders, I'm like warmly welcome to join our Bitcoin app webinar, like which is coming in like in next month. So yeah, that's it. So I mean, I think Bitcoin is not going to be people like it's going to fix the entire war, and the entire war will have a kind of like a a great future. I don't think Bitcoin will fix every single thing of our society issue, but Bitcoin will significantly transform our society into the better place, especially people living in like underprivileged positions. So that's my thought.
Thank you, Win. Also, do you have any additional initiatives at Human Rights Foundation that our audience should be aware of, keep track of, except of the webinars where they can join? Or maybe you could also share any workshops or programs that are also available when it comes to Bitcoin education, if we are already talking about those.
Yes, yeah, for sure. Certainly, I'll send you the link, and maybe like you can like have that, contribute, share it back with your friends and community here in the webinar. Thank you for offering.
Sure. Victoria, coming back to you. I think that there is one case that you were involved with, and I think it is very worthy to mention it. So, of course, we already touched base about how Bitcoin has been used in Ukraine and also around the world to address financial challenges. In Ukraine, it is war. So Bitcoin was also used for fundraising and for donations. And I know that with your help, Jonas Nick, the cryptographist from Blockstream, actually made a very big donation, which was 500K in euro on behalf of the MERS Foundation. Could you share this case with us?
Yes, that's true. Thank you for this question. That's true that now every charity, every military organization in my country accepting Bitcoin and crypto assets because it's very easy and it's quite popular and everyone do it now. In May 2023, the host at my Bitcoin meetup was Jonas Nick, a famous cryptographer from a Blockstream company. Before he came to Kiev, he asked me to set up some meetings for him with different charities in Kiev. And I did it. And 8 months later, I've got an email from Jonas, who happily informed me that MERS Foundation is his family-related charity organization, donated 500,000 euro to our famous charity organization. It's called Superhumans. This charity helps people who lost their limbs at war and for civilians. And this money from MERS Foundation was used to construct a new building, a new hospital building for these people in Lviv. And the CEO of this organization, she recorded a special thanks video to MERS organization. And I was happy to share this act of kindness from Bitcoin, from World Bitcoin community in my social networks. And very many Ukrainian medias interviewed me about this case. And I think many people at that time found something new about Bitcoin and how it works.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great case, and it's actually amazing how war facilitated the adoption of Bitcoin in Ukraine. I would also like to ask you a question because you have a big background in media, and when you started organizing the Bitcoin meetups, how do you think your media experience was helping in organizing these meetups, or rather, I would say how it helped to make the communication part? Because quite often there are lots of misconceptions, and I assume that when you first gather people, you cannot understand who would be 100% of the audience, whether these are people who are coming just from outside to understand what's the technology about, or these are people who are more into trading kind of stuff. How do you manage all that?
Since I have worked in different media houses, most of my friends are journalists or media managers in my country. And at first they were skeptical about my Bitcoin hobby, about my posts about Bitcoin and participation in different Bitcoin conferences. But still over time, they realized that it wasn't a scam, and I didn't try to do a scam with them. And they started coming to my meetups, especially journalists who were writing about this topic, and to learn true information about Bitcoin. Because in my country, really, when you told to someone that you are in Bitcoin industry or you're in crypto, people just looking at you like, okay, scammer. it was there. And I think due to my media reputation, something has changed in my friends' heads, in my friends' thoughts. Nowadays, Ukraine is going through hard times in the economy, and ordinary people are suffering. And of course, Bitcoin can be an alternative to fiat money in my country too. But we need to explain to people more about how it works, and what I'm doing, I'm trying to increase Bitcoin adoption in my country, talking to different chains and services company about accepting Bitcoins as a payment. That's what I'm doing.
Yeah, I think that definitely you are doing an important job, and I think it takes the time and process because, of course, communication, they always matter, and the narrative that we put around certain issues, it also requires time to shift people's minds. I would like to build the next part of our webinar in the way that we will discuss the regulations a little bit, and then I would suggest to also open the chat box for our attendees, because maybe some of those who are joining us today, they also have a few questions, and it would be great to hear their perspectives, so questions as well. So the next question will go to Jorge, because recently they introduced the new regulation, which was with European Union's markets in crypto assets. And it was fully in effect December 2024. So how would you see then this current regulation impacting the adoption and the integration of Bitcoin in European Union? And then how would you see the challenges that this regulation present for both users and, of course, the service providers?
It's a very challenging regulation for people. Like Europe, following its tradition of over-regulating markets and over-regulating and trying to regulate to the point in which innovation cannot occur in the continent, then it's extremely difficult for people like yourself who are using a Bitcoin to send humanitarian aid. You are not being classified as a high-risk client. You need to have so much financial compliance that it really undermines the ability to operate with Bitcoin for many companies and many organizations, non-profits in Europe. Europe had this antagonistic view on not only Bitcoin, but any kind of crypto assets, but especially Bitcoin. And of course, it's because also Bitcoin has been less willing to engage in advocacy in Europe, contrary to, let's say, Ethereum, which has a more flexible kind of policy in Europe against them. The same happens with artificial intelligence, for example, in which Europe is trying to regulate artificial intelligence to the point in which it is almost impossible to not only create, but also create businesses that can apply the artificial intelligence. And it follows the same kind of pattern in which they classify as high risk a lot of activities, a lot of economic transactions or economic functions. They create so much regulation and compliance requirements that makes not profitable to operate in Europe. This has, of course, a different set of consequences, because on the one hand, you can say about the diminished well-being of consumers. You can also say about the diminished opportunity or room to operate for European firms. You can also see, on the other hand, the decreased ability for American firms to expand to enhance its operation to European markets. So it's inefficiencies on all levels of the supply chain, inefficiencies at all levels of economic activity. It is really problematic because Europe, if you combine the whole European single market, It's 450 million people. These are 450 million people who are put in a situation in which they cannot be entrepreneurial, they cannot innovate, they cannot adopt and adapt and embrace this technology. And this is bad for everybody. It's bad for human rights. It's bad for the people who are in Europe who wants to do international work, let's say humanitarian work or businesses. And it's bad for the people in Europe because if they want to innovate, they will not be able to do so. So you can only imagine about how many Bitcoin-based technology solutions are not being created because of bad regulation. Bad regulation can be soft or direct in the way it impacts the economy. People don't have access to capital, people don't have access to financial resources simply because of the effects of this regulation. So I believe that on the one hand, what we need to do is that we need to double down our efforts in Europe to address these regulatory barriers. It is possible, we just need the political will to do so. And when I say political will, I said about the people from the Bitcoin community. Because many people in the Bitcoin community in Europe have been extremely antagonistic towards the idea of engaging in any kind of political efforts. But the problem is that if this doesn't happen, the people who represent other ideas or the people who don't want to see technology and innovation to flourish in Europe, they will win. And the region will continue to stagnate. And right now, Europe is in a crossroads in which either Europe innovates or it will fade away. Either Europe's embrace technology or it will continue and actually become even worse, their economic stagnation and eventual economic decline. In Europe, most companies do not adopt AI. I believe that is in the single digit, the number of companies, in the percentage of companies who are adopting AI in its operations. And what the Commission is proposing, the European Commission, is to throw money at companies to adopt AI, when the solution is actually to make it easier for companies to embrace AI. The same with, for example, the level of financial inclusion of people, the same with the level of technological progress in Europe. We're coming to a point in which productivity growth in Europe, especially in Western Europe, is reaching to 0% per year. So if you combine productivity growth in Western Europe at 0%, demographic collapse in Europe, and at the same time, all this pressure coming from energy markets, coming from a more fragmented international markets, coming from more isolated US and China for their own political reasons, the common points in which Europe either embrace technology or it will have serious economic consequences. And its young people, they will continue to live. They will continue to move to other places seeking opportunities. So if you have this brain death, if you have this drain of people going to other jurisdictions, then it's not the future that all of us who live in Europe we want, because this is a beautiful place. It is a beautiful country, it's beautiful people, beautiful culture. It is such a blessing to live here. We should not allow it to lose. But this is what will happen if we don't make necessary reforms.
Yeah, absolutely. At We Are Innovation, we are promoting innovations in many ways. And of course, that includes everything that you touched based on whether we are talking about the AI, which is a whole another topic for the whole another webinar with the regulations and adoption of the technology. But I guess the same comes to financial technology, the awareness about how it can make the impact, and of course the regulations. Speaking of which, Victoria, I have a question for you, because of course there is also the shift of the current regulatory landscape for Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies in Ukraine. And as far as I remember, the first draft of the law was drafted even before the beginning of the full-scale invasion, but then it was failed because of the very obvious reason of full-scale invasion when it was coming to executive part, and now there are changes in that. And I know that you've recently organized the event on both regulations and taxes and finalization of this law. And you also did that last year. So what has changed since then, and what are the possible scenarios when it comes to passing this law?
The draft law problem continues for 7 years, actually, and nothing has changed since my last event on this topic 1 year ago. Currently, the national bank is most likely to become the regulator for the crypto industry in my country. And at my last event 1 week ago, our officials confirmed that cryptocurrency will be officially legalized in Ukraine by the summer of 2025. So they said, they promised to us taxation of crypto income will most likely be based on the model of investment income model, 15% of taxes and plus 5% military duty, totally 23%. And it's a huge actual. But the situation with national bank as a regulator of crypto industry in my country is quite interesting now, because at the same time, national bank also plans to launch a test version of CBDC in the upcoming months. So they will regulate crypto industry and launching CBDC at the same time together. We don't know how it will be. So I've talked to the industry representatives, to my friends, the founders of different crypto projects, and all of them agree that the most projects will stay in shadows due to high taxes and understandable desire to keep privacy. So no good news about this in my country.
Yeah, it's absolutely logical to introduce the digital grievance while there is the technology that is decentralized. Win, maybe you will help us to summarize this webinar, and then we will all give the floor to our audience. So you are working with Human Rights Foundation, and you are working with Bitcoin Policy Institute. And of course, you also heard the perspectives of the colleagues, and I'm pretty much sure that you guys already had other private conversations on the given issue. But then, given your experience and also personal context, how would you see what strategies would be the most efficient for advancing Bitcoins in terms of financial freedom? And most importantly, as Victoria, Jorge, me, we are based in Europe most of the time, how can European community support these efforts?
All right, Shane, start. Sure, yeah. So, yeah, I think, currently, what I have been doing, what I have been having hundreds of conversation with people, in the past year. I think the most important thing and the most pressing issue, like the most challenging issue about adoption Bitcoin is education. Bitcoin is, I think, probably the most misunderstood technology in our generation, right? So but that's at the same time we look at the history of innovation. In 125 years ago, typewriter was illegal in Turkey because they do not want allow just average people to write something on a typewriter and publish somewhere else because they want to control the media at the time 125 years ago. And electricity, at the same time, it was invented about 120 years ago as well. So but electricity was actually invented in New York City. So the city currently I'm living in. So the thing is, at the time, people think electricity is very dangerous. And media is also talk about how electricity is going to kill other people. It's extremely dangerous. And yeah, but only the one step deeper, and those anti-electricity campaign were supported financially by the lamp, like traditional oil lamp businesses and company, because electricity is like disrupted technology at the time in 20th century, early 20th century. And then one day, there's a guy in New York City, it's like randomly tested electricity and he died. What happened? So people got afraid, but electricity was like actually a superior technology, 100 years ago. So it overcame challenges, misunderstood, all those steps. And today we have electricity, people invented like internet, people invented everything on top of the electricity technology. So I think, and then, even nowadays, electricity is stay dangerous, right? I mean, because like, even though they have now safety equipment, all those stuff, there's like here and there, there's like, people who got shocked by electricity for some reason, and then they die, it's still happening in the 21st century. So nothing perfect in our world, but still technology transform our civilization. Like I still remember like when I was a kid in Burma, like I started using internet in 2006. So it's like kind of like a little bit late, to the internet party. But at the time, people say, oh, internet is a very dangerous, internet is basically a place to watch like adult video. Like basically, say like people who go to the internet cafe are kind of like a bad people. But I didn't care, because I believe in the I did believe in the like internet technology, because it's allowed me to see the other side of the wall just in front of the computer screen, right? But nowadays, everything like everything about internet has been changed, right? Internet has been became an integrated part of every single people's life on this art. So I think right now Bitcoin has been going through the similar phase and the similar pattern, I could see, because like look at the history of innovation. Every new technology has been disliked, misunderstood, got criticized, in the human history. So Bitcoin got to say 15 years from 2 user to over 300 million user within 15 years. Zero network downtime in the past 10 years, zero hacking incident. So I think like in terms of technology, Bitcoin is superior, and in terms of like in terms of visibility, in terms of reachable in the global technology age, internet age, I think it's like so like overall what I want to say is like I think education is important. The proper education is like, which is why I and my friends from Human Rights Foundation Financial Freedom Team has been actively working on to deliver the positive message, the right message, appropriate message to different kind of people on up, because like a non-profit leaders, activists, journalists, and then let them see the other perspective of Bitcoin. And also in America contents, I've been also sharing the experience of how people in developing country who do not have a US dollar privilege relying on the Bitcoin or some sort of digital assets or stable coin, to preserve their hard-earned economic energy. So I think so overall, like education is important. Spreading the Bitcoin idea, Bitcoin message to the right people, and the right message is like extremely important. And that's why I think, and which is also why I believe in this global Bitcoin adoption mission and Bitcoin education, which is why like I and my friends from Human Rights Foundation has been actively, basically tackling this kind of like a most pressing issue in terms of like a global Bitcoin adoption. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing your perspective, Win. Yeah, and as I said, it would be amazing if you could also drop a few links for people so that they could broaden their knowledge on the technology and how it is helping the repressive regimes and people who live in them. So I would like to thank you guys for sharing your expertise today. And for a moment before I will let you go, let's also check out whether there are any questions. And I see there is the first question. So El Salvador has adopted Bitcoin as an official currency. How could other countries benefit from adopting a similar type of policy? The question is.
Sorry, I think you're muted. I could not hear what you said again.
Oh, sorry, was I muted?
Yeah, you were muted.
Oh, I'm so sorry. So we got the first question, and the question was that El Salvador has recently adopted Bitcoin as an official currency. The question is, how could other countries benefit from adopting a similar type of policy?
All right. Who would like to go first?
When you can start if you'd like to, and we can just go in around if you'd like to.
Yeah, so I think, yeah, this is a very good policy. Like, El Salvador has adopted Bitcoin as a legal tender in 2021, around the same time. So it's been about 4 years. And, I mean, there's been like, I personally have never been to El Salvador like at this point, but I'm planning to go there and witness like every situation. But, yeah, a lot of my friends, in my community, they've been to the El Salvador and they've been enjoying, using a Bitcoin, over there. And a lot of like a street food vendor in El Salvador has been like accepting Bitcoin. Like, yeah, there's a good example here. I just posted on my LinkedIn also today, like, in Bangkok right now. I'm in Thailand, Bangkok. So in Bangkok, like, there's some other like street food vendor, because like Bangkok is one of the like not one like number one world tourism city, and there's a lot of Bangkok is well known for street food, local street food. And one of the local guy I met, he's like a burger guy, like he make a burger on the street, and he offered to accept Bitcoin as a form of payment, on top of the local fiat currency. I asked him like basically, he basically said, oh, I studied about the Bitcoin technology, and I am willing to accept Bitcoin because it's a better form of currency than the local currency. So that's what basically his answer. So I think adopting a so I think since everybody knows about it, like U.S. government also like exploring the option to adopt U.S. strategic Bitcoin reserve, right? So I think like like there's a lot of like assumption on like from the both side of like whether it's a good or bad. To me, to my personal opinion, every Bitcoin adoption is good. If United States government initiated U.S. strategic Bitcoin reserve like a policy, I think the world will follow the United States leadership. So I think, yeah, every adoption in Bitcoin is a good for our global Bitcoin adoption. So yeah, I think every other countries will follow the Bitcoin adoption and they will get benefit from it. How? Because they could potentially create a reserve for in their 21st century, in the digital cyber age. And in terms of computational power age, I think they can be a superior because that they own a Bitcoin currency. They can use before to strong with the local fiat currency to encourage innovation and entrepreneurship in their home country. So I think that's like in a form of non-financial benefit they could get in their home country in terms of human resources capital.
Thank you. Jorge, Victoria, would you like to add something on the question?
Yeah, sure. In terms of look, in terms of El Salvador policy, it really depends on country to country, right? This is a very kind of aggressive, actually, like policy, like in the sense of acquiring Bitcoin at that rate and to put it in the national treasury. It really depends country to country because it also depends on the level of risk aversion that every country has. What I think is more feasible is what some lawmakers in the US are proposing, which is to have a stockpile of Bitcoin you know, similar to the way countries have gold reserves to try to counteract fluctuations in the market. For policymakers that see Bitcoin as digital gold, this makes perfect sense. And this is, of course, something more in line to what standard policy advices you will have. Because the other side of the coin, which is to have Bitcoin adopted as a payment instrument, this is something that is, of course, much more, I think, useful, especially for Latin American nations, in the sense of giving this opportunity to people to use Bitcoin and then businesses to receive Bitcoin. I think this also, that's the most kind of a standard and advisable policy for the average nation, especially in Latin America.
Yeah. Victoria, if anything.
I really can't imagine that situation in my country, especially now when there is a war. So maybe it can be, of course, it is a dream to have this type of digital currency as a payment, but I think for now it's not real because we don't have any regulation about that, because we really need to pay taxes and to support our army, and maybe after it will be, it comes through, not now.
Thank you. We have another one question. Is there currently any good method to remove the KYC from your Bitcoin without so-called dirtying them further, without the need to sell and buy them on the decentralized market?
Yeah, can you repeat the question?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, sure. Yeah. There is a website called Holder. Let me put in the chat. So in the is it getting to everybody? I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm sending in the host and panelist group chat. So yeah, there's a website called Holder. So basically, you do not need to register KYC, and you can participate in the global Bitcoin economy, without showing your identity. And yeah, I mean, everyone can participate, to any country, and in exchange for fiat currency to Bitcoin or Bitcoin to fiat currency. I think that's like especially very much important for like activists and non-profit organization operating in oppressive regime, because I mean, sometimes you for a political reason, you're gonna have to use non-KYC services in order to achieve your human rights mission. So I think those kind of websites like are very essential for people living in a closed society.
Thank you. Jorge, Victoria?
No, fine. I agree with you. It's a good answer.
Great. Any other questions? Let me also check out the questions, whether we have anything on our YouTube, as we are also live streaming. Okay. Guys, if someone is watching right now, this is your last call to ask the questions. Okay, so if no questions, I would like to thank everyone once again for your time, and thank you for contributing to today's discussion. We would be very happy, as we are Innovation, to host many more educational webinars like that in future. So have everyone a lovely evening, and in your case, have a good night. And thanks once again for making it in such a big time zone difference. So thank you.
No worry, it's an enjoyable conversation today. We connected with my friends Jorge and also Victoria. So yeah, have a good evening over there, or have a good day ahead, in Florida context.
Yes, exactly. I want to, thank you, Tanya, for organizing. It's great. Thank you. Good to see you, Victoria, and good to see you, Win. And thank you for what you guys do. It's really, for me, always inspired by reading what you guys do, following you guys on social media. And I'm here anything you need, and always willing to help. And that's why this community is so great, because all of us, we have the same mission. We want the same for our people, and we are all committed to advancing freedom, human rights, economic freedom. So thank you, Tanya, for organizing, and thank you, Win and Victoria, for also coming.
Yeah, let's stay in touch.
Of course.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you everybody for participating
Bye.
as well. Yeah, bye.
Bye.